So, with the details, as we have read the information of the summary, we have the receipts there for both the three categories of budgets. We have the actual, original, and final budgets. Amount is in billions. So for the receipts, taxation, borrowings, trading activities, aid from international, disposal of assets, and then other receipts are there. So these form part of the receipts. Yes. Then we go to the payments section. Remember, if you look at receipts and payments, your mind should already be drawn to a type of budget called a cash budget. A cash budget is more or less the same as a cash book. Cash book records mostly receipts and payments, money in and money out. So you should already be able to compare and contrast between a cash budget and the data that we already have. Payments we have to defense, education, health, housing, and others. So what does the examiner want us to do with this information? It's a very short information there. Let's see what the examiner wants us to do. Required Part A, the statement of comparison of budget and actual amounts for the fiscal year ended 30th of June 2013 in accordance with International Public Sector Accounting Standard IPSAS number 24. So we need to do statement of comparison of budget and actual amounts for that year. So presentation of budget information in financial statements, that is IPSAS 24. That is what the concept the examiner is testing on. Presentation of budget information in financial statements. Part B, we are told to provide a graph which will represent the data above. You see, you are presenting a budget information in the financial statements. Then now you need to present or provide a graphical representation of that data. And this one is done during a meeting by the good CS of this ministry. Which ministry is that? Ministry of Finance. Now, members, this question here is testing on that concept of presentation of budget. So where do we start from? We start from a very simple perspective. As we want to answer part A, we need to ask ourselves, what do you do with the data of budgets between actual, original, and final? You need to ask yourself, which type of budget starts? Where do you normally start from? Then, which elements or which of the two are we comparing? So that you ask yourself, do we have any variance? And how do we describe the variance? Remember, budget making starts from the original draft, where you do the original budget. For those of us who are working at the moment and you are fortunate to find yourself seated in a table where budgeting is done, you realize that you'll be receiving departmental drafts or budgets or estimates of what they're likely to use. So once you receive that information, you put it together to come up with the budget. And that budget you're coming up with from the first time, it's the original. That budget, now you have to, when you start the real period that the budget should be in use, you may have to adjust the budget, and that's where supplementary budgets come in case you realize it does not align with the real situation. So when such adjustments are done, then you say, I have a final budget copy. Then you will compare that with the actual figures that you realize now these are the actual figures from our budget, and you find the deviation. We call it variance, budget variance. So whenever you want to do budget variance, you are comparing final budget and the actual budget. Final budget and the actual budget. So those are the two elements that you are comparing. You do not compare using the original budget, because original budget is what undergoes adjustments. And some of the adjustments that you may have had is something called supplementary, so that you come up with the final budget. So we compare these two to come up with the variance. Now, somebody to remind us or let us know, how do you compare the budgets? Do you start with the actual, you compare with final to come up with the variance, or you start with the final, compare with the actual? How do you get variance? For your reasoning to make sense, for your reasoning to make sense. And I want you to reason in the perspective of receipts and payments. Remember, the reasonings in these cases are different, right? When you are receiving, your argument is different from when you're paying, especially when you talk about variance. Somebody to try. Remember, you'll be alone in the next few days. You'll be very much alone. I will not be there. Your colleagues won't be there. So start practicing loneliness. Start practicing loneliness and to get used to loneliness so that you answer the questions yourself. Practice loneliness, members. It's very important. It will help you on a rainy day. Nico is saying we start with actual. Good. Winnie is saying we start with the final. We compare it with actual. All right. Metrine is talking about actual. Steve-O is saying final we compare with actual. And my internet is not stable. I'm seeing some warning here. So in case you're not able to hear me clearly, let me know. I've already seen some warning here. I have to remind you that you'll be alone and you start practicing loneliness. Rose Joy, final minus actual. I see members are on the same side. Actual less final. Okay, that is Oppo. Glado is saying final we compare with the actual. Then Bataki final is the base for comparison. Thank you, members. I think all of you are on the same side, and I would want to join you and agree that whenever we want to look at the variance, budget variance, we need to compare that final budget with the actual figures so that we get to find the variance. Remember, this should be the reference point. Under ideal situation, these are the expenses that we need to incur. But because of obvious reasons, you cannot always have an ideal situation. That's why the actual figures are coming in. So we compare in reference to what we expected to have taken place. So I will come here and get the variance by putting an equal sign. Then I would want you to look at very keenly the interpretation of the two. Look at very keenly interpretation of the two, especially when you talk about receipts and when you talk about payments. Members, as much as we are looking at the final budget as the reference point, you have to be very keen when you look at the two categories of cash flows. When you are receiving and when you're paying. Remember, in most cases, when you talk about budget, people normally think about paying only. But budget, you also budget on what you are supposed to receive. This is a ministry of the government, and the ministry gets funding from the exchequer. When they get funding, they have to budget for whatever they expect to receive, and as much as they have to budget for what they expect to spend. Now, as much as I've agreed with you that we have to give reference to the final budget, it is mostly applicable when you talk about payments. We expected to pay this much. What have we paid in actual sense? We've paid the actual. We were expected to pay this, for example. What have we paid in essence? We've paid 800 for defense. Now, what variance do we have? Right? Let me do it so that we see that argument I'm bringing on board. Now, members have said we start with the final, then we compare with the actual. Now, we are talking about receipts. We expected to receive 1120 billion, but we have received how much? 800. Have we received less or more? You can see what we have received is less what we expected to receive. On taxation, we expected 1120, but what do we have? 800. I want you to look at that argument and check the variance figure. Our variance is positive. Now, how do you want to interpret the positive 320 in that perspective of argument? Members, are you seeing what I'm trying to talk about? We expected to receive 1120. We have received 800. This is under the section of receipts. And I believe you agree we have received less. What interpretation will you give to that positive 320? All right, very good. I see members are saying we talk about adverse. Now, if you do not want headache, if you do not want to scratch your head so hard with the arguments, I will go with what Winnie is trying to suggest to us there. When you come to receipts, when you talk about what you expect to receive, do the vice versa. Start with the actual, compare with the budget, so that when you have a positive variance that is favorable, when you have a negative variance on the receipts only, you talk about adverse. But it is also true that final budget should be the reference. So long as you understand the argument and you give the interpretation correctly, it could be with the positive 320 the way it is. So long as you can interpret it well and say, this is adverse, you're still correct. But if you feel that the positive will confuse you because adverse normally is on the negative side, so you can do the reverse when you talk about receipts. What reverse am I talking about? You will start now with the actual, compare with the final to get negative 320. Then you can be guided. If you're comfortable with the negative, you already know a negative means adverse. Yes? So you will give it an interpretation of adverse. And if you're supposed to use the logical function, use logical function. If you're supposed to use logical function, then you will say, for example, equal the logical function if, I will pick it using my tab key, then what will I say? If the final budget, meaning I expected to receive 1120, if that final budget is higher than what I've actually received, I expected 1120. If the final budget of 1120 is higher than the actual, or the actual amount that we've received, then Excel, please let me know. If it is always higher on receipts, then that means it is adverse. I've not gotten what I expected to receive. So in that case, let me know or tell me that one, the verdict means it is an adverse. Let me just write it in small letters, adverse, like that. But if this final budget is less than what I've received in actual sense, meaning I've gotten something better. If I've gotten something higher than what I expected to get, if the final budget is less, meaning actually it is now higher than final, then give me a return or a verdict to say that this is now a favorable condition. We should be happy because we've received more. We've received more than what we expected. That is now a favorable outcome. We've now gotten more than what we expected. But if the final budget will be equal to the actual, what we expected to receive is exactly what we have received. If it is exactly what we have received, please give me a verdict to say that there is no variance. Give me a verdict to say that there is no variance, meaning everything balances out. Yes. So if that is the case, I will confirm, and you can see that the verdict of Excel for that first argument is adverse. And we can also do our manual argument, and we realized we expected 1120, and the only amount we've gotten is 800. It is still adverse. This is my argument, even if I autofill it for the whole receipt section, because the receipts and payments are handled separately. Then I want us to compare and confirm this part too, because there was a formula. If I drag it one bit, you also realize the argument is still the same. We expected 480, but we've only received 400. So we have received 80 billion less. That is not a favorable outcome. It is adverse. If I stretch it one step more, you realize we expected from trading activities to receive 840 billion. But we've only received 800, meaning it is 40 less. The outcome is still adverse, members. If I go a notch higher, from aid from international, we expected those guys to give us 360 billion. But they went up and gave us 400 billion, meaning they gave us some amount in excess of what we expected by 40 billion. So that is favorable. We are happy people. If I just take another step and check on disposal of assets, we expected to get in return of 760 billion, but we've realized 800. So we've gotten more than what we expected. That is a favorable of 40 billion. Again, if I check on any other receipts from other sources, we expected 280 billion. But to our surprise, we've only realized 200. So from our budget, we are short by 80. That is adverse. So members, I believe you see the logical function, how it works. And we've talked about receipts. Now let's look at payments. What changes when we now start arguing on the amount we need to pay? What changes in the argument when we look at the amount that we need to pay, members? So when we come to the payment section, you ask yourself, we budget to pay defense 720 billion, but in actual sense, we've paid 800 billion, meaning we've paid more than the budget by 80 billion. Is that adverse or favorable? If you pay more than what you expected to pay, for example, you see some item, and especially I've seen it happen to motor vehicles. You find a car, very nice car, being advertised online. It is in one of the yards in Mombasa, along Moi Avenue. Someone tells you you can get a very nice X-Trail 2015 at 1.5 million. You know very well at the back of your mind, X-Trail cannot trade at 1.5 million. But they're telling you they are doing an offer. They want to clear their yard so that they bring new stock. Now you rush to Mombasa, you get there. Your budget is 1.5, right? You are very ready with this amount. You get there. And they're telling you the unit that you saw has already been sold. We are very sorry for the inconvenience, but now that you are here, we have an alternative for you. We can get you another very clean X-Trail, which is even better than what you saw. But now we only need 2.4. Yes. So let's go and let you see this. Your budget was this. You might end up spending even 2.3. You might end up spending 2.3 million. In this case, you've spent more than what you budgeted. So that amount that you surpassed what you expected to spend, that is an extra. So you have undergone an adverse reality, And I can see members there responding by saying that is adverse. And I believe we understand that argument. So let's put it down. Let's put it down here, members. All right. So I will come here and say, now the reverse is true. We are comparing the budget, which is the final budget, with the actual amount spent. So I will pick on 720 final, compare it with the actual, and then you get an outcome of minus or negative 80. We can bring on board our logical function to reason together. And members, examiners nowadays at this level, when they ask you, or in this case, you look at the question here, they just said presentation of the budget information, but they might ask you to use logical function. Whenever they ask you to use a logical function to reason out, by the way, I think there was a question on logical function in budgets. I guess that was August 2024. If you can be able to get that paper, you check on that budget question, you realize there was a direct question by the examiner asking you to use a logical function. Yes, they asked to use a logical function. So I'm here letting you know how to use logical function. So whenever the examiner wants you to use logical function, your argument may be right, but the examiner will be interested to see, did you use a function? They will check, because that is what the question is asking you. The question is not asking you to give just a reasoning from what you see. Confirm to the examiner that you understand the logical function. So I've shown you how to use it. Let's now use it again when we come to payments argument. All right. So I will put an equal sign. And what do? I want to compare these two elements of budget. And I will start by saying, if in any case, my final budget or the amount I've budgeted to spend, if in any case, for this defense, if in any case, or for any payments that we will do from this ministry, whether it is defense, education, health, housing, or any other payment we are going to do, if our budget will be higher, if our budget will be higher than what we will actually spend, if our budget will be higher than what we'll actually spend, then we shall have saved. Because we budgeted to pay more, but we've paid less. We shall have saved. And when we save, then that condition will be favorable for us. We shall have a saving from this ministry for that case. But should there be a scenario where what we budgeted is less than what we will actually pay, meaning we will pay more than what we actually budgeted, then we will not be happy. That status will be adverse to us. So in that case, it will be adverse situation. it will be adverse for us. But should there be a situation where what we budget is exactly what we are going to pay in our final budget? Should there be a situation where the exact amount that we budget is the same amount that we're going to pay, then that means we shall not have any variance. We shall not have any variance. In that state, we don't have an excess or a loss. We shall have done a very well matching budgeting process. So Excel, please give me the verdict for the first case. I've rubbed off the formula. I've clicked on my delete key, but I will repeat that logical function just now. I started by saying, if what we budget to pay is greater than the amount that we've actually paid, meaning we are going to pay less, that condition will be favorable to us. It will be favorable to us because we shall have saved some amount. But if what we budget to pay will be less than what we actually pay, meaning we pay more than the budget, we will not be happy people because the verdict will be adverse. We shall have gone an extra mile to look for any other source of money to pay because the actual amount spent is higher than what we budgeted. But in any case, the exact amount that we budget will be equal to the exact amount that we spent or we spend, then we don't have any variance. Value if false, we don't have any variance. Very good. We don't have any variance like that. Now, with that verdict of logical function, now Excel can tell us, and you can see that for the first case, we budgeted to spend 720, but we've spent 800. So it is adverse, we have lost, members. So for the second scenario, if I just sort of fill for all the rest, we go to the second scenario, and Excel is telling us that for the Ministry of Education, for education, we budgeted 1,200 billion, we've spent 1,200 billion. So it's telling us there is no variance, which is true, and we agree because the difference is zero. Yes?
Put your cursor on the one of the functions here on the logical.
I put my cursor on one of the functions. I'll put it. Are you good?
Kindly just repeat that logical function, please.
Okay. You've added the word please. So it will not be very good if I don't repeat. I'm at your service. Very good. So I'm starting again. We are on payments. We are budgeting to spend on certain vote heads. One of them is defense. Now, we are budgeting to spend 720 billion. Logical function. Now, as we budget to spend 720, should we spend more? Should we spend more than the amount that we budgeted? Or should we budget for this vote head? But the budget, the amount that we budget is higher than what we will spend in actual sense. We budget with 720 under the final budget. If that amount that we budget is higher than the actual amount we will spend, meaning we shall have some balance, some money remaining along that budget because we spent with a higher value. If that case will be true, then we shall have some saving. So instead of using the word favorable, I can't even talk about saving. We will have a saving. Favorable just means a saving or excess. But in this case, we'll just, when talk about budgets, it desired to use either favorable or adverse, but it simply means there will be a saving. When you talk about payments, there will be a saving. When you talk about receipts, when you talk about receipts, you'll talk about an excess. Even if you use the word excess, you're still okay. But we are on payments, there will be a saving. That saving is what we call favorable, 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 like that. Yes, because we spent less than what we budgeted. But should there be a case where we budget for an amount to spend on a certain vote head, but in actual sense, the amount that of the budget is less than what is actually spent, meaning we spend more than the budget. If that case is true, then the outcome is adverse. We are not saving. That is a loss. The outcome is adverse. In budgets, we use the word adverse, not a loss. It is an adverse. That means we've surpassed the budget. We have surpassed the budget. We budgeted 720, like in this case, but we are spending 800. So what we are spending is more than the budget. In that case, if whatever we are spending under the final is higher than what actually is spent, then the outcome is adverse. But should there be a case where what we budget to spend on that vote head is exactly the same as what we've actually spent or what we will actually spend, then we have no variance. Or no balance. It balances out. Now, that is what is used in this function called value if false. What is it that is false here, members? What is false is very simple. It is false that these other conditions are not true. It is false that all these other conditions are not true, meaning the final budget is not higher than the actual budget. Again, it is false that the final budget is not less than the actual budget. All these ones are false. If all these are false, then what happens? Then it simply means they're equal. If this is not greater than this and this is not less than this, now what is remaining? They're equal. If this is not greater and it is not less, yeah, so both the two are false, then it simply means they are equal. So in that case, we say there is no variance, like that. Did somebody get something? I need a confirmation there, members. I've gone very slowly there. Did you get it?
Yes,
Did you
thank
get
you.
it? Very good. Very, very good. All right. So that logical function gets us through all those elements of payments. And with the elements of payments now, I had set my formula here. I will just now autofill the formula and you'll see if it aligns or not. Where there is no variance, it means the budget and what is spent are the same. Budget and what is spent are the same. Whenever you see favorable, it means you budgeted with a higher figure, but you've actually spent a lower figure. You see that, members? Then if it is adverse, it simply means you budgeted with a lower figure only to come to the ground and realize things on the ground are different. You needed 800. So you've surpassed your budget by how much? 40 billion. That is it. Now, we look at the question and we go a notch higher. We need to present this budget following IPSAS 24, presentation of budget information in financial statement. All right. So what do we do at that point? Very simple. We will have to come up with a reconciliation statement. But before we come up with a reconciliation statement, we need to look at the overall net effect of the amounts we've surpassed and the amounts we have saved, the losses or the excesses and the savings. So to get the excesses and the savings, remember, we are dealing with payments and receipts separately. We're dealing with payments and receipts separately. So I will come up here, and I do not want to interfere with this original question, even though I've used it to come up with these workings here, but there is no harm. I can just highlight them. But I hope it will not confuse anybody, because what we are working on, you are seeing. So you can see we have receipts here and we have payments. Now, do you know what I want to do? I want to introduce a row. I know someone already knows the shortcut I've used to introduce that row without right-clicking and mentioning insert. Do not like inserting things, my friend. You have the knowledge of Excel shortcuts, so you know how to add the extra row or extra column very fast and easily. So why am I introducing that extra row? What I want to do is to get total receipts. What I want to do is to get total receipts. Total receipts. That is why I'm adding that extra row. Now, to get the total receipts, I'm going to use my usual auto sum functionality. That is the alt equals. I get the total receipts for the actual budget. Then that formula remains the same for the two categories of budgets, for the original and final. So I have total receipts like that. I can highlight them in yellow. Then we look at also the payment side of it. Remember, we want to present this budget information on the financial statements following IPSAS 24. All right. So we go and also do total payments. There is some row here, but I can as well add another one like that. Then we say total payments like that. So I want to do total payments here. Can also highlight it in yellow. Using alt equals functionality, I do the same for the three types of budgets like that. Once that is done, now my simple reasoning is coming in. If we already have total receipts and payments for each type of budget, we need to ask ourselves, how do we get either a surplus or a deficit? Looking at each type of budget independently. Remember, these variances, we've come up with them when we looked at the two comparisons, final and actual. But on each budget itself, we need to ask ourselves, under actual, the total that we have actually received is 3,400 billion. The total that we have actually spent is 3,520 billion. Have we spent more or less than what we have received? So we have to look at either we are running on a deficit or on a surplus. Why? We are comparing receipts and payments. This is a cash budget. Receipts and payments. We are comparing them and asking ourselves, do we have a surplus or we have a deficit? All right. So we have to compare and talk about either surplus or deficit, whichever the case we want to find out there. Now I will come here and ask myself in the first instance, when we talk about the surplus or a deficit, we are asking ourselves between what we have received and what we've spent. If you spend more than what you've received, like most good members here, somebody is going home with a salary of 30,000 net. Then if you track down your monthly expenses, you realize that your monthly expenses runs up to 65,000. You are spending more than you are receiving. Now, what makes up the difference? Most of it comes from M-Shwari. Most of it come from Fuliza. Other one came from Tala. You also had to secure others from Okash. At some point, you got stuck and went to KCB M-Pesa. So you've actually spent what you don't have. So if this case is true, if that case comes to true, what is the verdict? Somebody is saying hustler. Interesting. And this is a very sad reality. This is a very sad reality that, that people find themselves in, especially in this era of mobile money and the borrowing apps that are all over, and they send you SMS prompts that you qualify. Yeah, your limit has been adjusted upwards. Some of them even say, did you know you can get this money? Some of them even tell you that do not get stuck. And actually, you are stuck. You're already thinking, where will you get money to buy that? They're telling you, do not get stuck. You can borrow. That's all of this. Some of them are telling you, your limit has been adjusted. Your full is a limit. Or it has gone upwards. So you have some money you can spend. Interesting. Let me go. Let me remove that there. All right. So members, now from that argument that I've given you that because you can relate easily to it. Now let's come here and say, if what we have received is higher than, so I think I like the logical function here. I like the logical function here, but I don't want it to write to me either surplus or deficit. It's okay, no worries. We compare receipts and payments. Let's just compare receipts and payments. Now, you are going to give your own verdict whether it's a surplus or a deficit. So, whenever payments are more than receipts, then that is a deficit. But whenever receipts are more than payments, that is a surplus. So you ask yourself, from your salary that you earn, or if you are doing business from your net income, from your overall trading results, are you on deficit or on surplus? If you're on surplus, it means you have some saving. At the end of the month, the salary that you earned the previous month, you still have some of it when you're earning the following month's salary. If that is the case with you, then you are running on a surplus, which is very good. But if you end the month on a negative note, then something is not very good. We run the same formula across, and you realize the first two are negative, meaning in the original budget, the receipts, if you compare with payments, do you know what I wonder? This is an original budget. You already plan that you are planning to even to spend more than what you are receiving. Are these people serious? They plan to spend more than what they plan to receive. This is funny. Eh? These guys already planned to run on a deficit. This is not serious. And I think that's why they had to adjust their budget so that they plan to receive more than what they're spending. Yes, I think that is one of the reasons why they had to adjust it to come up with the final budget, because these people are crazy. Yes. All right. All right. Bottom-up approach. Okay. So with that, members, I want us now to move a notch higher, and present this information in a financial statement. Now, how do we present the information in a financial statement, having seen the reality? And when we present it in a financial statement, we've already done all the analysis. All the analysis we've done. What is now remaining is transferring the figures so that we present it in a financial statement. Now, when doing the financial statement, remember, I told you this is a cash budget, and the information that we are presenting really is nothing much. We're just going to do a reconciliatory statement. So we're going to do a reconciliatory statement for the budgets that we have. So I want to talk about reconciliation statement. Reconciliation statement like that. Because we've done all the summary, what we just want to do is to present that information in a financial statement, and the financial statement that we are using is a reconciliation statement. So our figures are in billions shillings. Our figures are in billions like that, and this side will be the items and the amounts. So we can either draw a table or leave it open like that. There is really no problem. So I want to pick these figures directly from here all the way, and I want to start from something interesting. I want you to look at these three categories of budgets. We have actual. This is what has actually been spent. Remember, actual verdict or the actual budget will give us the actual reality that we have at present. In fact, that cell, let me highlight it in red. This is the actual reality, the present reality. This is the present. Let me use the word present. This is the present reality we have. Now, in our reconciliation statement, it should come and end at the present reality. I hope you are getting that statement. It should come and end in the present reality, meaning the final figure or the final effect should be the present reality, which is a deficit of 120 billion. This is what we are currently running on because we are on the actual. Actual is the most present reality we have. So our statement here should end here. Now we are just working with the same things, but we change the format so that we end here. Members, get it right. All right, good. So how do we end here? Now, if this is the present reality, what was the expected reality? We start from expected to come to the present. What reality did we expect? We expected to have a reality of 400 billion surplus. Members, is that true? So if that is true, I will put a green. This is the expected reality. But our expected reality has not come to be. This is the current reality that we are facing. So for us to reconcile and come up with this statement, we start from what we expected the reality to be. Then we work our ways with what we've already analyzed here under variances so that we come and arrive to the current reality so that whenever we are presenting this information to this good minister or the CS of this ministry, they're able to see that actually this is the reality we expected from the final budget. This is the very final budget that we had. This is the reality we expected. But as things are on the ground, the reality has been different. And our reality is that we have a deficit of 120 billion. So present this information to them so that they have to see what they expected and what is current and what has happened. Very good. Now let's come and reconcile those statements. So we expected the reality of having a surplus. Why am I talking about a surplus? I'm talking about a surplus because in our budget, we budgeted to receive 3840 billion. And we budgeted to spend 3440 billion, meaning we expected to have an excess or a surplus of 400 billion. So that is where we start from. Expectation, then we come to reality. Expectation, we come to reality. You go to the market, you go to the street to look for a wife, expecting everything to go well. Then the reality turns out different and we stop there. We come to the surplus. What surplus did we expect? We expect a reality of 400 billion like that. Now, from there, we want to reconcile with the realities that we have per line or per vote head. And the realities we have per vote head, we start by the first element. On receipts, we start with the taxation. What reality have we faced or what differences have we realized on this line of taxation? Now, I will pick them, I will refer to the first one. Then, once I've referred to the first one, what I will do is just to pull it down to bring all of them up to other receipts. I don't have to copy them line by line if you already have them recorded down. Then, when I come to reconciling what we expected the reality to be, I will now focus on the variances we had analyzed. So I'm referring to that cell. And once I refer to that cell, I will also pull it down like that. These are the variances that we were able to realize per vote head or per line or per item from what we expected. We subject it to what we have realized. We expected 400 billion surplus. These are the realities per line or per item in terms of variances. Now we will look at the net effect so that we get to see, do we go to the current reality that we have realized we are facing? Yes. So we again go to the payment side of it. So I may skip a line, may or may not, there is really no problem. Then I come here and look at also these elements one by one. I refer to the first one, then the remaining ones, I just pull them down like that, up to others like that. Then what happens? I also bring the realities that have happened per line, the realities we've realized per line, and I refer to the variances. I refer to the first one, then I now pull the rest to the end like that. And once that is done, now we ask ourselves, what is the overall reality? What is the current state that we have? We already know our current status. The only thing we are doing is presenting the information to justify in the financial statements following IPSAS 24. We are reconciling and we come here and we will get the overall net effect. Let me just put this double line, put it in bold, and I don't even know what word to give here. It is the current reality we have, though it is a deficit. I know you can write deficit or you can leave it there. But again, there is no problem if you just write it deficit, because that is the reality we have. We are running a deficit from our budget in this ministry. So what do? I get the overall effect from expectation to the current realities, the net effect, which is different from our expectation. What do we have currently? Alt equals will become handy here. It helps me to get the overall net effect. And members, you can see the overall net effect is taking us to the reality that we are running on a deficit of 120 billion. That is a presentation following IPSAS 24 on the financial statements. Part A done. We now provide a graph to represent the same data. Members, are we together? Members, are we together? Members, are we together? Somebody to confirm to me that we are together.
Yes.
All right, all right. So if we are together, let's do the last simple bit. It is very simple bit that we are remaining with, and we are supposed to provide a graph. You know, even if I try to buy time, time is not moving. And whenever we've been doing serious things, time cuts are short. This life, no balance. Now, we want to provide a graph to represent this data so that we properly present it for the good CS to see using graphs. Remember, in BDA, every topic, apart from AFR, all these other compulsory sections, FM, AMA, you need to always present. Every topic requires dashboarding, presentation of that data, visuals. All right. So let's come and present it. So which data are we working with? We are working with this data here. And because we are drawing our graph, and when we are drawing a chart, we do not need these subtotals and all this. So you know what I will do? I just want to copy this information. I highlight the whole of it like that, up to others like that. Then I just want to copy it. And once I copy it, I want to bring it here, but I want to paste it as values. Then what do? I do away with the totals. I don't need the totals. I'm using control minus. I'm using control minus to remove what I do not, the row that I don't need or the column I don't need. So I also want to align the titles to appear on one row. So do I need the level of precision in billions? The answer is no. So I will use control minus to remove that row. Then of course, I'm remaining with these titles. I put them in bold. All right. This word written receipts, is it important? The answer is no. I will remove it. So I'm having my figures there. And I think I just need to insert a table to insert a table like that. I know someone is
What about
wondering, how did I insert the table? Yes? Somebody
that
is
title of
asking. Title of?
payments?
We are still editing out. We are still working it out. So that payments, we are going to remove it because we don't need it. We don't need it. I do away with it. All right, like that. Somebody's already saying I'm too fast. Members, do you know you'll be alone in the next 2 weeks? Do you know that? Really? And today, in fact, I'm very reluctant. I'm moving very slowly. And it is very intentional because we've done a lot and we're just on home stretch. We're just on home stretch. Somebody's saying I'm fast. Really? You know what I've done here is just to transfer this data. There is nothing I've done much. I've just transferred, copied this, brought it here, and I've inserted a table. And this table, I don't need any filters, by the way. I don't need those filters, by the way. You see these filters? I do not need them at all. I do not need them at all. Somebody's saying I'm fast. Okay. Somebody's asking, how do I insert the table? And I see a very good friend there has responded. Eileen is saying, use Control T. That is exactly what I've used. Yes, that is exactly what I've used. So use Control T to insert that table. When you want to do dashboarding, Control T will help you very easily. And then this one here, I just want to, this table, you have table designs there. I don't need the header row. No, let me just retain it. Let me remove the branding and the filter button. I don't need that. Then I just need a plain table. And I have my plain table like that. All right. So with that, my table, is there any other adjustment I need to do now? Members, now that we've brought this data, and the data that I've brought here does not show the differences between receipts and payments, incomes and expenses, receipts and payments, incomes and expenses. Now, when we draw and insert this chart, it will randomly show these elements or these items. It will not be able to differentiate which one is a payment, which one is a receipt. In the outlook or appearance, remember, whatever is always on the first column of your table that you insert in a graph or a chart, that first column normally by default goes to the x-axis. Yes, when it goes to the x-axis, these other remaining variables will go to the y-axis where we have the values or the amounts. So this x-axis, it will not be able to show somebody who wants to understand the chart whether taxation was an income or a receipt or an expenditure. You get that? Now, we have to decide to make this thing clear. We are presenting to people who do not have that knowledge and people who need to understand. Oppo is asking, how do you remove color on the table? Oppo, it is very, very simple and interesting. What I did, I just clicked on my table anywhere. And then I want you to check on your menu bar. There is something called table design. You see my table design tab. Then from there, there is table styles. If I can choose any, I can even choose this color and you'll see my table is changing color like that. But I decided to take the one that will not have any color. But you are free to choose any. You can even choose this one that colors everything. You see that? So Oppo, you decide on which one. Let me even just pick that one so that you see that colors can come there. So just use table design. Then you pick on the styles that you want. You can even edit out colors. Yeah. So, but in an exam, those are aesthetics. The examiner is not interested in aesthetics. You can just do them if you have extra time. You've already finished everything and you are guaranteed of a pass. Then you can go ahead and play around with aesthetics so that you also make the examiner happy, hoping that the examiner is a lady. Will be very nice to see those colors will be happy and can even give you bonus scores. All right. But for me, I think I don't need the colors there. Right. Okay. Somebody's asking, how did you remove the drop downs? I removed the filter button. You see this? If I click on it, do you see the filters are there? So what I just did is go after in the table design, just remove the filters, remove the filters. So click on that to uncheck. To uncheck, branded rows was there. If I uncheck it, they disappear. Now, members, I was saying, you are presenting this information to people, an audience that you want them to understand what you're presenting. In that case, you have to differentiate between receipts and expenses. Receipts and expenses. Now, we have to decide and name one of them and leave the other one. Yeah, Jaden is saying yours will be marked by a lady. So Jaden, please use colors. Ladies love colors. Use interesting ones. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to mark the expenses side of it. Where did we start having the payments? From the defense to education. So you see from that defense, I want just to put something like expenses. Expenses, expense, let me just use expense like that. So you want to see how naming that part or putting the difference between receipts and these expenses make it easy to understand the table so that you see that this one now represent an expense, this represent an income. It is very important. We are presenting what we've already done. Now, with that information, we have everything we need. So what do you do? The usual one in dashboarding, highlight the whole table. After highlighting the table, what do? We go to the insert tab. Then, obviously, because you've highlighted a data, Excel will give you recommended charts. But I told you, the type of chart you choose is not cast on stone. Choose that which you feel best represents your data. Our data is about budgets, and our data has values. And what do we want to do with the values? We want to compare these three budgets: actual, original, and final. I go to all charts. Of course, recommendations will come by default. You don't have to choose recommendations, but recommendations are also possible outputs. See the alignment of this clustered bar? You see how it is aligned? These, our details, are aligned on the y-axis. I don't like that arrangement. It's hard to read this type of chart. If I don't have an alternative, then I would go with it. But if I have a better one or something that looks simpler to understand, I would not worry. I would not bother myself with that. Look at the second one. Also the same type of alignment, and it looks even more complicated with colors cutting across those bars, lying on the horizontal position. Not very interesting. But if there is no any other alternative better, this one would still do. The examiner will not beat you up if you choose this, but the examiner will simply ask, out of all the types of charts, this is what you decided to pick. Look at this other recommendation. Looks pretty simple, pretty easy to interpret. And our details are on the x-axis. We are dealing with presenting values. And this clustered column pretty does it well. It's not cast on stone. If you feel that this 100% stacked does the job for you, who are we to refuse? You are the one who has felt it is good. Go ahead. You are the one who feels somebody must understand the coloring there and interpret it. It's okay. If you feel that the funnel will do the job for you, who are we to refuse? But for me, I feel this is pretty simple and direct to understand. I will go with it. All right. So let me just pull it here, then expand it a bit. And I told you, whenever you insert a chart, make sure you label the axis. On the y-axis, it is obviously the amount. What was our level of precision? These figures are in billions of shillings. On the x-axis, as you can see, on the x-axis now, we have our details. We have our details on the x-axis, so I will just write their details. And it is details having both the elements of receipts and payments, yes. And you can see the bars have colorings. And by the way, I don't like the way the colorings are. Taxation has both No, I don't like how that coloring is. We are free to even change the chart design. And under this chart design, each bar, each column is still colored. I think there should be a better chart. There should be a better one, which is not combining colors on one, one bar. I want to check another alternative. Let me see. You see the way this appears? There is no coloring on each. I don't know why when I selected on it. Okay, I see now the difference. You see the difference? This one has colorings on each column. Each column, you see one column here has both the three colorings, but in this case here, each column has a different color, and this one is easier to understand and interpret than this. I'm not saying this is wrong. It is not wrong. The only difference is this one becomes simpler than this to understand for somebody who wants to look at it and get information very fast. So I will go for this, which each column has its own color, so that when you talk about actual, you know this is the color for actual. So you can compare actual taxation, you can compare original taxation, and you can compare the final budget of taxation. So from there, you can now compare what is the actual. We spent actually this. And on taxation, you see, this is not expense. This is a receipt. So you see the ones I added the word expense, you will clearly see that these one now are expenses. On defense, the actual expenditure is this amount. Then on the same defense, the original budget for defense to spend, we budgeted to spend this 1,000. Then on the same defense, we had a final budget of this. So you can compare final and the actual so that you can relate that information to this reconciliation summary on defense, and you realize that on this line of defense, there is, an adverse of 80. So you can see it clearly from that presentation. So I want to go ahead and label the axis. Y-axis, I had said, this is amount in billions of shillings. On the x-axis, obviously, we have our details like that. Then, of course, I told you about the title. It is good when you can write the type of the chart that you've used. So which type of chart have we used? I think this is a clustered column chart. So I will say clustered column chart, showing. What does it show? Or you can talk about graphical representation, but it's okay. Clustered column chart showing or presenting actual, the three types of budgets: actual, original. You following the way they're arranged: actual, original, and final budgets, like that. That title is important. And once you've done that, part B of the question is well presented. And members, that marks the end of that question. That marks the end of that question. How do we label the axis? I hope you've seen how we label the axis. When you click on your chart, there is the chart elements. You see the plus sign. It can maybe appear on the left side or on the right, but you'll see chart elements. There is a plus sign. There is a paintbrush below it. Then there is a funnel shape below it for the filters. So you just choose on that plus sign, click on it. Then you'll see a drop down of chart elements. Check on that box of axis titles. Check on the box of axis titles, and you'll be able to name your axis. I hope somebody has gotten something. I hope